Hello and welcome to Canvas as an extension of the classroom, brought to you by the Learning Innovations team. Regardless of your teaching modality, whether you're teaching fully online or fully in person or some mix, much of the learning that happens in your classroom will actually happen outside of the classroom. Even if you do have face-to-face time with your students, it might be only for a few hours a week. So much of the engagement with your materials happens while they are studying for an exam or doing homework or collaborating on a group project. And all of that work happens outside of the classroom. So this training is predicated on the belief that we have an obligation to students to structure that experience. This training was created to show how different module structures in Canvas can drastically alter the student's experience. And it is also worth noting that an optimized course design can also reduce the time that instructors spend answering confused emails or tracking down missing work. A lot of that administrative labor that goes into teaching can also be reduced if we structure a user experience for the student to help them navigate that out-of-class learning. So this training is designed specifically to get you thinking about the following things, to set you up to succeed in the following. We're hoping to evaluate some different Canvas module structures to determine which will best serve students' out-of-class learning needs. We are hoping to identify the ideal organizational characteristics of your Canvas course space. And we're hoping to analyze your current Canvas course spaces to determine if the current organizational structures influence student successes and or create any obstacles. So the idea is that you can take the material covered in this training and start to apply it to your own Canvas course spaces. I want to begin with a metaphor, and the metaphor is that of a physical classroom. When you walk into a classroom, you have certain expectations. There's an expectation about there being a podium and some technology, there being a screen that students can orient towards, there being desks and chairs, there being some more accessible furniture, a mix of right and left-handed desks, lights. There are certain expectations about the features of that physical space. And I like to imagine sometimes when it comes to talking about the digital space, I imagine walking into a physical classroom and having everything be completely misaligned with your expectations. Maybe you walk into a dark room and the lights are all the way across the room. Maybe you enter the room and you find that all of the student desks are stacked up against each other or facing the wrong way or flipped upside down. Maybe there's no podium in that room anymore. Maybe some of the technology that you need is missing, like a keyboard. And so when your space doesn't operate intuitively or in the way that you expect, it can really hinder the learning for that particular class period, particularly if you have to spend time trying to track down the right equipment or optimize or figure out how to work with the course space or the classroom space. If your desks are all out of order, for example, then you have to spend that time reorganizing the desks. And so I bring up this metaphor because I think that applying it to the digital space is useful. when we walk into the digital space, I think that there are some expectations, like students should know how to access the material that they need to study for exams. They should know how and when to submit assignments. They should know how to access an exam if the exam is being delivered in an online modality. There are expectations for these things. However, I don't know if we have quite the same uh, cultural expectations of a digital space the way that we do in a physical space. I would still argue that that organization needs to be intuitive for the students. And it can look very different, just as physical classrooms can look very different depending on the needs of your course. The physical space, the digital space should also be different depending on the needs of your course. But it should be intuitive, it should be consistent, it should be clear. And so that's one metaphor. I want to think about the digital space as a physical space. The other thing I like to raise is this idea of a percentage. And so imagine that you have 100% of the energy that you plan to spend on this classroom. And of that 100% of your energy, there's a certain percentage that you will dedicate to your in-person physical teaching and a certain percentage that you'll dedicate to structuring the online environment. Now, whether that means that you spend 90% of your time thinking about the in-person experience and 10% of your time thinking about the digital space, I believe that some degree of consideration of the digital space is in order. Some acknowledgement of the amount of learning that you intend to have happen outside of the time that you get to spend with your students. So in certain teaching modalities, this might be, you might have a fully online course. You might also have a course where you maybe meet only once a week. You might have a course where you're thinking, maybe I spend 60% of my time thinking about the in-person experiences and 40% of my time structuring the out-of-class, the digital learning experiences. Whatever the case may be, I like to suggest identifying what those percentages look like in the context of your own course, because I think having those guideposts helps us protect our boundaries and energy in terms of how much time we're spending planning either physical or digital learning spaces and how those spaces work together. Okay, so to begin, I'm going to show some different module structures. This first course space that I want to show you is an example of maybe a 90-10%. That is, 90% of the energy has been spent on structuring in-person experiences, and 10% has maybe been spent on this digital space. And in this example, all that we have done is we have set up a couple of modules. One just says syllabus, and it looks like it includes the syllabus and the course calendar. Another is a module that's just called readings. And in this module, every reading that is needed for the course has been attached. So it's worth asking, what do students have to know to do when they enter this course space? Well, students need to know that when they come into this course, they have to open up the course calendar. And then, and for demonstrative purposes, I have only included one of 4 units in this course. So I've included a project 2 here. So this is just 1/4 of a course. So imagine this calendar would be quite a bit longer because there would be a full semester's worth of material. And they need to find the week that we are on. So let's say that we're on week 8 of this course. They need to know that they need to read the following slides the following excerpts, watch this video, and review these mini lectures. So knowing that, they need to go back into the course space, and they need to know to scroll to readings. So they would go back to modules, and they would scroll through these readings until they found what they needed. Now, one of the things I remember was the excerpts, but I'm seeing that I have 2 excerpts from the same source, and I'm not sure which excerpt I need this particular week. And then I need to look for the slides for this week as well. And I'm really not sure where those slides are. And so I'm doing this activity to demonstrate for you what students will actually need to go through. They will need to scroll through this entire list until they find the materials that they need. This is adding quite a bit of time. It's also adding quite a bit of frustration because we don't know which of these materials we need to access. The other thing here is that my assignments have not been included in the module structure. So students would need to know to go into the assignments tab, and they would need to hope to find the assignments that they need available to them. So there has been some degree of curation in this space. Again, this is 10%. All that we've done here is put a long list of our readings. This is still more than what some courses will include. Some courses will simply upload all of the files for that course into the Files tab and ask students to be scrolling through the files, which is even less, I think, of an even less straightforward user experience. So that's our first example. So in that previous example, there are, of course, pros and cons. If you are running a course that is very heavily emphasizing the in-person experience, then having your list of readings and your list of assignments may be enough. However, as we noticed, it takes a lot of scrolling and it takes a lot of navigating back and forth between menu items to find what's needed. And so the next sort of level up, if you will, is to consider a unit by unit module structure. And I'll say offhand some pros and cons of this approach. What I've done here is just created a module with Unit 2. Again, for demonstrative purposes, I've only included 1 out of 4 units for this particular class. And so Unit 2 was a slidecast project. And what I've done is broken the modules into units. And so with course calendar, again, we need students to know that they have to go to the course calendar and find the week that they're on, just as we saw before. But let's say we're on week 8, and we see that these are all of the items that we need to review, as well as the assignments we need to look for. So I'll go back into my modules. And here, under Unit 2 readings, I have all of the items that the students need to review for this week. And so if we're on week 8 and we know that we need this excerpt as well as this slide document, then that's what we'll select for this week. These other readings will be for other weeks. So one of the cons of this approach would be if you really, really don't want students to engage with material from upcoming weeks. So ideally here with the module by module structure, I would open module 2 at the start of that module, and students may be able to work ahead. If that's something you don't want them to be able to do, then this module structure may not be the right option for you. However, if you don't really mind if students have access to all of the unit's readings, this is a great structure because it doesn't take too much time to organize. All that we do in this structure is we make a page and we list out all of the readings, and then we attach all of the assignments and discussion boards that the students need. And there are due dates attached to these items. And so students will know, based on what week of the schedule that we're in, they'll know which of these assignments is actually upcoming and which they need to worry about this week. And so unit by unit is a sort of good middle ground. It takes a bit of curating, but it creates a much more navigable experience, and it tells students exactly how to find what they need and when to submit them by. The next and final module structure that I want to show you today is an example of a course which uses first the template that our team has created. We have a version of this for global campus courses as well as courses on campus-based courses. So this includes the campus-based course template, which rather than sending students right into the modules when they open the course, actually sends them to a homepage. And the homepage will say the name of the course, and it will also allow you to create an image and add overview and learning outcomes. So I have not built out this entire course because we're just demonstrating some examples, but I will say that this is a version of a course that I have taught in the past. And in this case, we have created a very navigable menu structure where it's very intuitive. The first thing we go to is a course schedule tab, which is built in. And this is much like before, except since I've imported the full course in this case, we see a full 15 weeks. And we see what activities are due on a given week. From there, we move into modules. So let's say that we're in week 8 of the course, just as before. And what we've done in this case is created modules for every week. And so the students would know to just find week 8. And here in week 8, they will find a to-do list, they'll have some outcomes and an estimated time on task statement that I created. And then a to-do list. And so they'll know what they need to read and what they need to watch, and then any assignments that they need to do. And all of these items are just in, so this is the slide document that they need to review. And all of these items are in the order that students need to engage. So while this module structure certainly requires a high level of curation and can be more labor intensive and time intensive, it is the most intuitive of the options that I have shown you here today. What we've done is we've indicated to students how to orient themselves within the course. We're in week 8. And we have also indicated to students exactly what content they need to review, exactly what assignments to turn in and when. I really believe that a structure like this decreases the amount of administrative labor required of an instructor who is fielding emails from students who could not necessarily find this information, or perhaps missed it, or didn't know that there was a due date, or didn't know where to find the assignment Dropbox. And so curating to this level is really helpful. This is also very helpful if you have a course that is not 100% in person. So if you're teaching a course that is hybrid in any way or fully online, this week by week module structure or a similar module structure with this level of curation may be the right option for you. So again, today we took a look at 3 different module structures, and there are other options, but I wanted to plant this idea of how much of your time should you spend on structuring the out-of-class learning experiences for your students. Canvas is the tool that we use at Washington State University to structure that experience, and it has a lot of flexibility in terms of in terms of what kind of curation you wish to do in that space. Depending on the modality of your teaching, you may need more or you may need less attention spent on the Canvas course space. But I'm hoping that by reviewing these module structures, it helps you ask the question of whether the space that you currently have is contributing to student successes or perhaps creating any obstacles to their learning. Thank you for your attention, and I wish you the best of luck in organizing your Canvas course structure moving forward.